I already have 2 children with my new wife, and you are a barren, abandoned woman, the husband said mockingly when he met his ex-wife at the hospital. But she smiled calmly and told him the news that made him dumbfounded. The story I am going to tell is based on fiction and does not reflect real events. Enjoy listening. Natalia sat by the window of her small, dimly lit apartment, her breath fogging the cold glass as she watched the autumn rain cascade in relentless sheets. The city outside blurred into a mosaic of muted colors, grays, ambers, and soft greens blending like a melancholy painting. Months had passed since her divorce, yet the pain lingered like a bruise that refused to heal. Her home, once a sanctuary of shared dreams and laughter, now felt like a cavernous void, its silence amplifying her loneliness. She tried to coax warmth into the space, lighting lavender-scented candles that flickered uncertainly, playing soft jazz that drifted through the rooms like a ghost. But these efforts felt hollow. The ache of loss, intertwined with a deep sense of inadequacy, clung to her like damp air. The root of her heartbreak was a devastating diagnosis: infertility. Antonio, her ex-husband, had always envisioned a bustling household filled with children, their laughter echoing through the years. When faced with her reality, he couldn't reconcile his dreams with her truth. He walked away, leaving her to navigate her grief alone, his parting words cutting deeper than any blade. "I want children, Natalia. That's impossible with you." The memory of that moment still haunted her. The way her world seemed to fracture, the ground slipping from beneath her, as if the earth itself had turned against her. She felt shattered, discarded, her very identity as a woman reduced to a single, crushing flaw. In the weeks that followed, Natalia withdrew from the world, shunning friends and acquaintances, dreading the inevitable questions about her personal life. She imagined pity in their glances, or worse, silent judgment that she was somehow less because of her body's betrayal. The weight of their unspoken assumptions pressed down on her, isolating her further in her cocoon of sorrow. Her only refuge was Javier Fernandez, her reproductive specialist, a man whose compassion transcended the clinical confines of his profession. Javier was a rare soul, his warm brown eyes brimming with empathy, his presence a steady anchor in her storm. He didn't just discuss treatment plans. He listened, truly listened, to her fears, her regrets, her fleeting hopes for a different future. He explained, with patience and care, that infertility was not a life sentence, that modern medicine offered possibilities, and that she was not alone in her struggle. His words, delivered in a voice soft yet resolute, became a lifeline, pulling her from the depths of despair. Natalia could still recall their first meeting after the divorce, a day etched in her memory with crystalline clarity. She had arrived at his clinic broken, her eyes red and swollen from sleepless nights of tears, her heart heavy with a despair so profound it felt like drowning. Javier greeted her with a gentle smile, his presence like a warm hearth on a winter's night. He offered her a steaming cup of chamomile tea, its delicate aroma a small comfort in the sterile room, and sat quietly by her side as she unraveled. She poured out her pain, her guilt, her sense of failure, her fear that she would never be whole again. Javier listened without judgment, his silence a safe space for her grief. "Natalia," he said at last, his voice steady and kind, "I know this feels like the end, but it's not. You are stronger than you know, and you will find your way through this. I'm here to help you, every step of the way." Those words, simple yet profound, planted a fragile seed of hope in her heart, a seed she hadn't realized she was still capable of nurturing. Under Javier's care, Natalia embarked on a grueling treatment regimen, a labyrinth of medical procedures and emotional hurdles, but his support extended far beyond the clinical. He helped her rediscover her worth, reminding her that her value as a person wasn't tethered to her ability to bear children. She began seeing a therapist to untangle the knots of her emotions, practicing yoga to reconnect with her body, its strength and resilience, a quiet revelation. She took up painting, her canvases bursting with bold strokes of crimson, sapphire, and gold, colors that captured her pain, her hope, her slow reclamation of self. The journey was long, fraught with moments of doubt and exhaustion, but Natalia refused to surrender. Javier was her constant, celebrating her smallest victories: a day without tears, a painting completed, a yoga pose held a little longer, and lifting her spirits when she stumbled. His belief in her became a mirror, reflecting a strength she had thought lost forever. Over time, their professional relationship blossomed into a deep, trusting friendship. They shared long conversations over coffee, discussing literature, music, their childhood dreams, and the fears that kept them awake at night. Natalia felt seen in a way she never had before, not as a patient or a problem to be solved, but as a woman, a person worthy of respect and affection. Javier's ability to listen, to understand her without judgment, drew her to him like a tide to the shore. His quiet strength, his dry humor, his unwavering kindness, they were a balm to her wounded heart. One crisp autumn evening, after a routine appointment, Javier suggested they grab dinner at a cozy bistro tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The air was sharp with the scent of fallen leaves, and Natalia hesitated, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and trepidation. She agreed, and over plates of steaming risotto and glasses of ruby red wine, they talked about life's highs and lows. Javier shared stories of his own struggles, a painful loss that had left scars on his heart, moments of doubt that had tested his resilience. His vulnerability touched her deeply, revealing a man who had faced his own battles, yet emerged with a quiet, unshakable strength. For the first time in months, Natalia felt a spark of genuine joy, a warmth that spread through her like sunlight after a long winter. She realized Javier was becoming more than a friend. He was someone who filled a void she hadn't known could be filled. Their bond grew slowly, organically, like a vine weaving through a garden trellis. They spent evenings wandering the city's cobblestone streets, their laughter echoing under the soft glow of streetlights. They watched classic films in dimly lit theaters, their shoulders brushing in the dark, shared coffee at quaint cafes where the aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with their conversations, and explored art galleries, marveling at the beauty of human expression. Natalia found herself falling for Javier, his kindness that seemed to radiate from within, his sharp intellect that challenged her mind, his gentle humor that could coax a smile from her even on her darkest days. But fear lingered at the edges of her heart, a whisper of doubt that warned her against opening herself to love again. She was terrified of another heartbreak, of discovering that Javier's feelings might not mirror her own, that she might once again be left alone. One evening, as they sat on the terrace of a riverside cafe, the air fragrant with blooming jasmine and the distant murmur of the city wrapping around them, Javier reached for her hand. His touch was warm, grounding, a quiet promise in itself. "Natalia," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion, I know you've been through so much pain, more than anyone should have to bear. I know you're scared to trust again, to let someone in after everything you've lost. But I need you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I love you." His words washed over her like a gentle tide, soothing and transformative, dissolving the walls she had built around her heart. Her pulse quickened as she looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity, tenderness, and a love so profound it took her breath away. "I love you too, Javier," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of her confession. That night, their first kiss, a tender, heartfelt embrace under a canopy of stars, filled her with a warmth she hadn't felt in years, a promise of hope and new beginnings that felt like a gift from the universe. Years later, Natalia and Javier stood hand in hand at a small, intimate wedding ceremony in a garden aglow with fairy lights, the air heavy with the scent of roses and the soft hum of a string quartet. The setting was simple, but the moment was profound, a celebration of a love forged in resilience and mutual healing. Natalia felt like the luckiest woman alive, having found a partner who saw her fully, who loved her for who she was, flaws and all. Javier had become her rock, her safe haven, the one who helped her rebuild her shattered self-esteem, piece by painstaking piece. Yet, even in the glow of their love, the dream of motherhood lingered in Natalia's heart, a quiet ache that refused to fade. She and Javier pursued every medical avenue, enduring a relentless cycle of tests, procedures, and crushing disappointments. Each negative result chipped away at her hope, threatening to drag her back into the despair she had fought so hard to escape. Javier, ever her anchor, reminded her that their love was enough, that a child wasn't the sole measure of their happiness. But she knew he shared her dream, even if he hid his own quiet hopes to spare her guilt. His selflessness only deepened her love for him, but it also intensified her fear of failing him. One evening, as they sat on their worn leather couch, the room bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, Natalia's emotions overwhelmed her. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed, "Javier, I can't keep doing this. I feel so incomplete, like I'm failing you because I can't give you a child." Javier pulled her into his arms, his embrace a fortress against her pain. "Don't ever say that, Natalia," he said, his voice firm yet tender, his eyes locked on hers. "You are everything to me, my partner, my love, my home. You've given me a life filled with joy and meaning, and that's more than I could ever ask for." After a moment, he added softly, "We could adopt. There are so many children out there who need a home, who need love like ours." His words sparked a flicker of hope in her, a vision of a different kind of family, one built on choice and care. She looked at him with gratitude, her heart swelling with the knowledge that he would move mountains for her happiness. They began the adoption process, navigating a maze of paperwork, interviews, and home visits with cautious optimism. But fate, it seemed, had a different plan, one so unexpected it felt like a miracle. One unremarkable morning, as the first light of dawn filtered through their bedroom curtains, Natalia noticed subtle changes, a missed cycle, a faint nausea that greeted her at sunrise, a sudden aversion to her beloved morning coffee, once a cherished ritual. Her hands trembled as she purchased a pregnancy test, her heart caught between hope and dread, the weight of years of disappointment pressing against her chest. In the quiet of their bathroom, she stared at the two bold lines that appeared on the stick, a miracle, After years of heartache, invasive treatments, and shattered dreams, this felt like a gift from the universe, a second chance she had scarcely dared to imagine. She tested again, then a third time, fearing it was a cruel trick, but the lines remained, steadfast and undeniable, a beacon of hope in the darkness. Joy surged through her, tempered by a familiar fear of loss, fear that this miracle would slip through her fingers like so many hopes before. She called Javier, her voice shaking with emotion, barely able to form the words. "Javier, I think it's happening." His response was a choked gasp, followed by a hurried, "I'm on my way." He arrived home in record time, his face pale with anticipation, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and joy. They stood in their living room, wrapped in a wordless embrace, their hearts speaking what words could not. The air between them hummed with possibility, with the weight of a shared dream coming to life. The next morning, at Javier's clinic, an ultrasound confirmed the miracle. A tiny, flickering heartbeat danced on the screen, a rhythm that felt like the heartbeat of the universe itself. "Congratulations, future mama," Javier said, his voice thick with emotion, his smile radiant with pride. "Our baby is perfect." Natalia's tears fell freely, not of sorrow, but of overwhelming happiness, as Javier kissed her forehead, his touch a vow of their shared future. They stood together, hands clasped, staring at the screen, the tiny life within her a testament to their resilience, their love, their unyielding hope. Their lives transformed overnight, filled with a delicate balance of excitement and caution. Javier became the epitome of care, cooking nutritious meals with meticulous attention, ensuring Natalia rested, even reading her whimsical bedtime stories to ease her into sleep. His voice, warm and soothing, wove tales of enchanted forests and brave heroes, lulling her into a peace she hadn't known in years. Nightmares occasionally haunted her, vivid dreams of loss that left her waking in a cold sweat, her heart pounding. But Javier was always there, his arms a sanctuary, his whispers of love a balm for her fears. "We're in this together," he'd murmur, his breath warm against her ear. "You, me, and our little one. We're a team." They chose to keep the pregnancy private, sharing the news only with their inner circle to shield themselves from external pressures. Natalia wanted to savor this sacred time, to nurture the life growing within her without the weight of others' expectations or the shadow of superstition. By the 16th week, Natalia felt a newfound strength, a quiet confidence in her body's ability to nurture life. The nausea had faded, replaced by a gentle joy that warmed her from within. She began to embrace her pregnancy, marveling at the soft curve of her belly in the mirror, tracing its contours with reverence. She read books on motherhood, attended prenatal classes with Javier by her side, and found herself dreaming of the future, of tiny hands, first smiles, the sound of laughter filling their home. Javier accompanied her to every appointment, holding her hand during ultrasounds, asking thoughtful questions, and listening intently to the doctor's reassurances. His presence was her constant, her unshakable foundation, a reminder that she was never alone. On the day of a routine checkup, they arrived at the women's clinic early, settling into the waiting area with its soft hum of activity. Javier distracted her with light-hearted stories, his hand warm in hers, his laughter a melody that eased her nerves. Suddenly, Natalia felt a piercing gaze, a sensation that sent a chill down her spine. She looked up and froze. Antonio stood in the doorway, his once familiar face now marked by time, his posture slightly stooped, his eyes shadowed with something she couldn't name. Beside him was Marina, his new wife, holding the hands of two young children, a boy and a girl, their faces bright with innocence as they chattered about the colorful posters on the walls. The image of a perfect family stung Natalia's heart, a sharp reminder of the life Antonio had chosen over her. She tried to look away, to focus on Javier's voice, but Antonio's eyes locked onto her, lingering on her rounded belly. Surprise flickered across his face, mingled with something unreadable, regret, perhaps, or a flicker of envy. After her appointment, clutching ultrasound images that captured the delicate outline of her child, a tiny, perfect form that filled her with awe, Natalia found herself face to face with Antonio in the hospital corridor. She had hoped to avoid this encounter, had prayed the universe would spare her this confrontation, but there he was, blocking her path, his hands shoved into his pockets, his gaze cold and assessing. Marina stood beside him, her expression icy, her lips pressed into a thin line of disdain, while their children played nearby, oblivious to the tension that crackled in the air. "Well, hello, Natalia," Antonio said, his voice laced with a familiar cruelty, a tone that had once reduced her to tears. "Didn't expect to see you here, still chasing dreams that'll never come true, huh?" His words cut deep, reopening wounds she had worked so hard to heal, each syllable a reminder of the pain he had inflicted. "Antonio, we have nothing to discuss," Natalia replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. She clutched the ultrasound images tighter, as if they could shield her from his venom. He smirked, undeterred, his eyes glinting with malice. "Oh, I think we do. Look at you, still alone, still clinging to hope like a fool. Meanwhile, I've got 2 kids with Marina." He gestured to his family, his tone dripping with superiority, as if her existence was a mere footnote in his triumphant story. "And you? You're still a barren, abandoned nobody, aren't you?" The words struck like a physical blow, reviving every doubt, every tear-soaked night, every moment of self-loathing she had fought to overcome. Marina's glare, sharp with disdain, only intensified the pain, her eyes gleaming with a cruel satisfaction. But Natalia refused to crumble. She was no longer the broken woman Antonio had left behind, the one who had believed his words defined her. She had fought too hard, loved too fiercely, to let him wound her again. "Not anymore," she said, her voice calm but resolute, her eyes locking onto his with a strength that surprised even her. "I'm 16 weeks pregnant." Antonio's smirk vanished, his face paling as disbelief took hold. Marina's mouth fell open, her composure shattered, her eyes darting between Natalia and her belly. "What?" Antonio stammered, his voice betraying his shock. "That's impossible." Natalia's lips curved into a faint, triumphant smile, a quiet assertion of her victory over the past. "Life has a way of surprising you, Antonio," she said, her words carrying the weight of her journey, of every tear shed and every hope reclaimed. At that moment, Javier appeared, carrying a bouquet of white roses, their delicate petals a stark contrast to the tension in the air. His face was radiant with pride and love, his eyes fixed on Natalia as if she were the only person in the world. Ignoring Antonio and Marina, he addressed her, his voice warm and intimate. "Everything's perfect with our little one, mi amor," he said, kissing her temple, his touch a shield against the past. His love enveloped her, a fortress of warmth and certainty. Antonio and Marina stood frozen, their silence deafening, their presence diminished in the glow of Javier's devotion. Natalia introduced them with quiet dignity, her voice steady. Javier, this is Antonio, my ex-husband, and his wife, Marina. Javier extended a hand, his demeanor polite but unyielding, his grip firm and confident. A pleasure, he said, his tone neutral, but his eyes conveying a quiet strength. Antonio shook his hand, his expression devoid of warmth, his jaw tight with something unspoken. Congratulations, he muttered, the word hollow, a mere formality. Thank you, Javier replied, his confidence unshaken, his smile a beacon of their shared joy. We're overjoyed. Natalia took Javier's arm, and they walked toward the clinic's exit, their steps light with shared purpose, the ultrasound images tucked safely in her bag. As they stepped into the crisp autumn air, the scent of rain and wet earth filling their lungs, Natalia felt an immense weight lift from her shoulders. She had faced Antonio, the man who had once broken her, and emerged stronger, her heart intact, her spirit unbroken. The encounter, though painful, had been a final reckoning, a closing of a chapter she had long feared revisiting. In their car, Marina turned to Antonio, her voice venomous, her words slicing through the silence. Enjoyed humiliating her, did you? Now you're just a spectator in her happy life? Her tone was laced with resentment, not just for Natalia but for Antonio, whose silence spoke volumes. He stared out the window, the city lights blurring into streaks of color, Natalia's words. I'm 16 weeks pregnant, echoing in his mind, alongside Javier's radiant pride. For the first time, Antonio felt the true cost of his choices, a regret so profound it settled in his chest like a stone. He had lost not just a child, but a woman he had once loved, a woman he had betrayed in his selfish pursuit of his dreams. His marriage to Marina, his children, the life he had built, it all felt hollow in the face of Natalia's triumph, her happiness a mirror reflecting his own emptiness. Marina's glare burned into him, her own insecurities laid bare. She had always known about his past with Natalia, had sensed the shadow of his unresolved feelings, and now, seeing Natalia pregnant and radiant, she felt the sting of her own inadequacy. Meanwhile, Natalia and Javier drove home through the rain-soaked streets, their laughter filling the car as they discussed their baby's ultrasound, the tiny form that held their hopes and dreams. Javier pulled her close, his arm a comforting weight around her shoulders, his warmth a reminder of their shared journey. "How's my favorite future mama feeling?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with affection, his voice a melody of love. "Perfect," Natalia replied, her smile radiant, her heart full. "Thank you, Javier, for everything, for believing in me, for giving me this new life, for being my home." He kissed her forehead, his touch a vow, a promise of forever. "You're the one who gave my life meaning, Natalia," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "You and our little one, you're my everything." As they drove through the city, the rain-soaked streets gleaming under the streetlights, Natalia reflected on her journey. Javier had healed her, not just physically but emotionally, helping her reclaim her worth, piece by piece. Unlike Antonio, who had seen her as a means to an end, a vessel for his dreams, Javier saw her as a woman, a partner, a soul deserving of love and respect. She glanced at him, his profile illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard, his eyes focused on the road but filled with a quiet joy. He was her true home, not a place, but a person who would stand by her through every storm, who would catch her when she fell, who would love her through every triumph and trial. In that moment, a quiet realization settled over her. a truth that felt like a whisper from the universe. She murmured to herself, "Thank you, Antonio, for walking away. Because of you, I found Javier, the man who will never betray me, the man who showed me what love truly means." Without Antonio's departure, she might never have crossed paths with Javier, never known the depth of true love, never discovered the strength within herself to rise from the ashes of her past. As Javier squeezed her hand, his touch a silent vow, Natalia felt her fears dissolve, replaced by an unshakable certainty. With him by her side, she was ready, for motherhood, for life, for the beautiful, unpredictable future that awaited them. Their love, their child, their shared dreams, they were a tapestry woven from resilience, hope, and an unbreakable bond, a testament to the power of